A millionaire saw his humble employee helping the homeless and made an offer that changed her life. Before we begin the story, leave a comment below and let us know which city you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Emily Carter was in her third month working at Miller Enterprises. Even after a long day filled with paperwork, she kept up a habit that had become part of her routine. She headed to the small corner market, her usual stop after work, and bought packs of bread, juice, and granola bars. After paying, she walked out carrying the bags and crossed the street to the sidewalk in front of the company. There, a small group of homeless people was already waiting. Some were sitting on makeshift blankets. "Emily, it's so good to see you," said one of the men, an elderly gentleman with a gray beard named Marvin. She smiled and knelt beside him, beginning to hand out the food. "Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have juice and granola bars." Tired faces lit up. Soft laughter filled the air as they took the snacks, and Emily felt that warmth in her chest, the one she always got from knowing that, even with so little, she could do something for them. Little did she know that, from the top floor of the building, behind a glass wall, Logan Miller was watching closely. The CEO of the company wasn't easily impressed. Cold, rational, and business-focused, he rarely paid attention to his employees' personal lives. But in the past few days, he had noticed that young woman leaving work and going directly to that group in front of the building. At first, he thought it was just a coincidence, but then he realized it was happening every day. Even more intriguing, she never asked for anything in return. Leaning against his luxurious office desk, Logan narrowed his eyes as he watched Emily smile while talking to Marvin and the others. He frowned. What does she get out of this? He murmured to himself. Shaking his head, he stepped away from the window and went back to work. Still, part of his mind remained distracted by that peculiar employee. The next day was intense. Emily spent most of her time organizing reports and responding to emails for her direct supervisor, the head of the finance department. The job was demanding, but she never complained. She knew she needed it. That afternoon, as she worked through a stack of documents, she felt a shadow fall over her desk. Looking up, she found Logan Miller standing right there, staring straight at her. Her heart skipped a beat. "Mr. Miller," she said quickly, trying not to sound nervous. "Emily, right?" She nodded. She never expected the CEO himself to know her name. "How long have you been working here?" he asked, crossing his arms. "A few months?" Logan nodded slowly, as if calculating something. "Do you like your job?" Emily blinked a few times. It was a simple question, but coming from him it felt like a hidden test. "Yes, I do. It's challenging and, well, I'm learning a lot." He studied her for a moment before giving a brief nod. "Good. Keep it up." Then he walked away, leaving her sitting there, confused. At the end of the day, as usual, Emily went to the market, bought the snacks, and handed them out to the homeless. Logan, who had already left, walked out through the main entrance and saw her again, kneeling on the sidewalk, handing out food with a genuine smile. He stopped near his car, watching her in silence. Something about the scene both unsettled and intrigued him. He had never met anyone who did this every day without expecting anything in return. As he got into his car and drove home, Logan didn't realize that, for the first time in a long time, his mind was on something other than work. The following days followed the same pattern. Emily spent her workdays buried in spreadsheets and emails, completing the meticulous tasks required by the finance department. She was efficient, discreet, and dedicated, but she never sought attention. Her only break came at the end of the day, when she left the company and went straight to the homeless. Logan Miller noticed. If before he had occasionally glanced out the window and seen it as something temporary, now it was different. It was a habit, a commitment. And to him, it made no sense. This girl spends her money and time helping strangers every day. That's not normal. He caught himself murmuring those words as he watched Emily in her usual spot, kneeling, handing out snacks, and smiling. She looked so genuinely happy. Logan turned away from the window, unsettled by his own thoughts. He had always believed that people only did things expecting something in return. Money, recognition, promotions, future favors. But what did Emily gain from this? At the office, the routine was always the same. Emily had become known as efficient but somewhat clumsy, especially when she was nervous. That particular day, as she was finishing up a report, a notification popped up on her screen. A last-minute meeting with Logan Miller and the finance department. She swallowed hard. It wasn't that she was afraid of the CEO, but his presence had a strange weight in the room. Logan was known for his serious demeanor and sharp gaze. He was direct, to the point, and never wasted time on small talk. Emily grabbed her notepad and headed to the meeting room on the 34th floor. As soon as she walked in, she felt the eyes of her colleagues on her, and, more importantly, Logan's gaze. He recognized her immediately, but instead of greeting her or showing any expression of interest, he simply gave a small nod, signaling the meeting was about to begin. "Gentlemen, let's get straight to the point," Logan started, his voice firm and to the point. "The latest reports show solid growth, but we have unnecessary expenses that need to be optimized." The department heads began presenting numbers and suggestions while Emily quietly took notes. She was so focused that she didn't even notice Logan looking directly at her for a brief moment before glancing away. When the meeting ended, Emily stood up with the others, but before she could leave, a deep voice called her attention. Emily, her body tensed instantly. He had said her name. Again. Turning around, she saw Logan leaning against the table, arms crossed, his expression neutral. "Come with me." Emily simply nodded, trying to stay composed as she followed him to his office. Once inside, he closed the door and sat behind his spotless desk, motioning for her to take a seat across from him. "You've been working here for a few weeks. What do you think of the company so far?" She blinked a few times. "That question again?" I really like it. It's challenging, but I'm learning a lot." "And do you have any plans for the future?" Emily hesitated. She hadn't expected a CEO to take an interest in something so personal. "Well, I want to grow in the finance field. Maybe get a more stable position and who knows, pursue a postgraduate degree someday." Logan nodded slowly as if processing the information. Then he changed the subject. "Every night when you leave the building, I see you helping those homeless people." Emily's heart stopped for a moment. "You see?" she repeated, blinking. "My office overlooks the building entrance. I watch you every night." Emily felt her face heat up. He had been watching her? Every day? "It's not a problem, is it?" she asked hesitantly. "No." Logan shook his head. "I just don't understand. You do this every day. You spend your money, your time. You don't seem to want recognition. Why?" Emily relaxed a little when she realized he wasn't judging her. He was just confused. "I like to help, but why?" she shrugged. "If I were in their place, I'd want someone to do the same for me. Besides, it's a small thing, but it makes a difference." Logan was silent for a moment, just watching her. Then he leaned forward and clasped his hands together on the desk. "And you do this every day?" "Yes." He let out a brief sigh and murmured something to himself before nodding. "You're dismissed." Emily blinked. "What?" "You can go back to work." She hesitated for a second before standing up and leaving the office. As she closed the door behind her, she stood still for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Later that evening, as she left the building, Emily repeated her usual routine, buying food and handing it out to the homeless. Logan, from his office above, was still watching. But now, he wasn't just watching. He was trying to understand. Why would someone so young, earning so little, choose to spend her money like that? He crossed his arms, feeling slightly irritated with himself. This doesn't make sense. And for the first time in a long while, he realized he wanted to understand. The days passed quickly, and without Emily noticing, the end of the month arrived. Her routine at the company was well established by now. Work all day in the finance department, stop by the small market, buy food, cross the street, and hand it out to the homeless. And, of course, without her knowing, Logan Miller continued watching from his office above. He didn't understand it, but he couldn't ignore it. Emily never asked for anything in return, never bragged about it, never tried to use it for attention. She simply did it because she wanted to. And for some irritating reason, Logan wanted to understand why. But that Friday, something different happened. It was payday. When Emily opened her banking app that morning, her heart filled with relief. Her first paycheck had come in. It wasn't a big amount, but it was enough to cover the rent, pay off some overdue bills, and buy groceries for the month. Or at least that was the plan. But as the day went by and work came to an end, one thought wouldn't leave her mind. Marvin, The old man who had been living on the streets for years, always polite, always kind, despite his tough situation. He wore a tattered coat and his shoes were barely holding together. There was also Miss Ellen, who slept with a thin blanket, and Paul, the young man in his 20s, who always said he'd get out of this life soon but never managed to find a job. Emily knew she could do something more for them, and before she even realized it, she changed her route. She stepped into a discount clothing store and bought coats and shoes for Marvin. She added a thick blanket for Ellen and a few essentials for the others. Then she went to the grocery store and bought enough food to make sure they all had a decent meal that night. By the time she left the store, her wallet was practically empty, but her heart felt full. "Emily, this is too much," Marvin said, holding the new coat with teary eyes. "I don't even know how to thank you," Ellen exclaimed, hugging the blanket. Paul, who always tried to act tough, just looked at his new sneakers and muttered, "This is gonna help me get a job, Emily. Thanks." She smiled, feeling that familiar warmth in her chest. "You don't have to thank me. You would do the same for me." That night was filled with more laughter than usual. The group was happy, and that was all that mattered to Emily, until she checked the time and realized a small but important detail. She had no money to get home. Emily blinked a few times, hoping her brain would come up with a solution. But there wasn't one. She had spent every last cent. No time to dwell on it, she decided the best option was to walk. After all, how long could it take? The answer came after 30 minutes of walking. The streets were getting emptier, the cold was creeping in, and her feet were aching in her uncomfortable work shoes. She sighed, pulling her thin coat tighter around her. There was still a long way to go, and then a sleek black car pulled up beside her. Emily watched as the window rolled down slowly, and when she looked inside, her heart skipped a beat. It was Logan Miller. He raised an eyebrow. "How far are you planning to walk?" Emily opened her mouth but hesitated. Great. Of all people, it had to be him. "Home," she answered, trying to sound casual. Logan glanced at the road ahead. "You live far?" "Yes." There was a brief silence before Logan sighed and unlocked the door. "Get in." Emily hesitated. Getting a ride from the CEO of the company didn't seem like the best idea, but honestly, she was exhausted, so she accepted. The moment she got in, she felt the warmth of the car and sighed in relief. Logan drove in silence for a few minutes, then glanced at her. "Why are you walking home?" Emily saw no reason to lie. "I kind of spent all my money." Logan's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. "You got paid today?" "Yes." "And you already spent everything?" She nodded. "On what?" Emily hesitated for a second before simply answering, "Helping the homeless." The car went completely silent. Emily turned to look at him and found Logan staring at her like she had just said something unbelievable. "You spent your entire paycheck helping strangers?" She let out a small awkward laugh. "Well, when you put it that way, it sounds like a terrible financial decision." Logan blinked a few times. "Because it is." Emily crossed her arms, looking out the window. "Not to me." Logan kept his eyes on the road, but she could tell he was processing what she had just said. After a few seconds, he took a deep breath. "Do you at least have money for rent?" Emily smiled, looking away. "No, but I'll figure it out." Logan let out a short, humorless laugh. "Unbelievable. You're really—" He stopped mid-sentence. Emily raised an eyebrow. "I'm really what?" "Different." She blinked. Was that a compliment? The rest of the ride was quiet, but not uncomfortably so. When Logan finally pulled up in front of her building, she let out a relieved sigh. "Thanks for the ride, Mr. Miller." He looked at her for a moment before replying, "If you're going to keep spending your money like this, at least let me know. I'll cover your ride home." Emily laughed, shaking her head. "I'll manage. I always do." She opened the door and stepped out, but before entering the building, she turned to him and said something that made Logan Miller sit in his car for several minutes after she was gone. "Good night, Mr. Miller, and thank you for caring." He frowned, watching her disappear into the building, and then it hit him. He actually cared. But why? Logan Miller didn't like distractions. His days were planned down to the minute, and he rarely deviated from his schedule. Work, meetings, reports, more work. He was a man of results, not sentimentality. But that Monday morning, as he sat at his desk in the office, something was bothering him in a way he couldn't ignore. He was distracted. And the reason was Emily Carter. Friday night hadn't left his mind. The moment he saw her walking alone, the way she hesitated before accepting the ride. Their conversation in the car, she had spent her entire paycheck helping the homeless. Her entire paycheck. He repeated that thought in his mind, trying to make sense of it. What kind of person does that? Emily Carter was reckless, irresponsible, and absurdly selfless in a way that made no sense to him. But above all, she was intriguing, and Logan hated things he couldn't understand. The morning at the company went on as usual. Emily arrived on time, as always, and started her work, unaware that the CEO was watching her from time to time. She looked normal, as if nothing had happened. "You can't just ignore this, Logan," he muttered to himself, tapping a pen against his desk. After an hour of staring at reports without being able to focus, Logan finally made a decision. He picked up the phone and pressed a button. "Call Emily Carter to my office." Now, Emily was focused on organizing a document when she received the message. Her stomach tightened slightly. Why did Logan Miller want to see her? Her heart beat a little faster as she got up and walked down the hallways to the 35th floor, where the CEO's office was. The assistant greeted her with a nod and pointed to the door. "You can go in. He's waiting." Emily took a deep breath, adjusted her blouse, and turned the doorknob. When she entered, she saw Logan sitting behind his large, dark wooden desk, an unreadable expression on his face. "Close the door," she obeyed, trying to look calm. "You asked to see me, Mr. Miller?" He interlaced his fingers on the desk and studied her for a moment before speaking. "Yes, I want to understand something." "All right, what is it? Why do you do this?" Emily frowned. "Do what?" "Spend your money helping people who will never give you anything in return." She blinked a few times. "So that's what this was about." "You really want to know?" she asked, crossing her arms. Logan kept his gaze fixed on her. "I do." Emily thought for a moment before answering. "I do it because I can. Because I see them every day and I know no one else cares. And because—" she paused, choosing her words. "If I were in their place, I'd want someone to do it for me." Logan rested his elbows on the desk, leaning forward slightly. "But you have no obligation to help them. No one is asking you to." "Since when do we need an obligation to do the right thing?" There was a brief silence. Logan looked straight into her eyes. Emily held his gaze, unwavering. He sighed and leaned back in his chair. "You're unbelievable." Emily gave a slight smile. "I hear that a lot." Logan ran a hand over his face as if dealing with an unsolvable puzzle. "You know you can't keep living like this, right? Spending all your money and putting yourself in difficult situations." "I know," Emily shrugged. "But I always figure it out." He took a deep breath and shook his head. "All right, you can go back to work." Emily nodded and turned to leave. But before she could open the door, Logan said something that made her stop in her tracks. "If you ever need money, let me know. I'll cover your transportation." She turned to face him. "Is this a joke?" "No, I'm serious." Emily narrowed her eyes. "Mr. Miller, I appreciate the concern, but I can take care of myself." "That's what I thought, but Friday night, you were walking alone in the cold because you spent every last cent on strangers." Emily opened her mouth to respond, but then closed it. He had a point. Logan crossed his arms. "Next time, at least accept a ride." Emily stared at him for a few seconds before sighing. "If there is a next time, I'll think about it." And then she walked out. In the days that followed, Logan kept paying attention to her. Not because he wanted to. It was involuntary. He wanted to understand what drove that young woman. But the more he tried to find a logical answer, the more frustrated he became. Emily remained the same. She worked, made subtle jokes with colleagues, always helped when someone needed it, and at the end of the day, she continued her routine with the homeless. And Logan kept watching. But for the first time, he didn't know what to do with that information. The following Friday, something unexpected happened. Emily was just about to leave when a heavy rain started pouring outside. She looked at the wet streets and sighed. This would make things harder. Even so, she grabbed her umbrella and headed out. But as she reached the building's entrance, a black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down slowly, and there was Logan Miller. Emily's eyes widened. "Mr. Miller?" He looked at her, expression unreadable. "You're really planning to go out in this rain?" She blinked. "I am." He sighed and unlocked the door. "Get in." Emily hesitated. "Is this becoming a habit?" "Don't make it weird." Just get in. She chuckled and, for the second time, accepted the ride. The drive was quiet at first, the only sound being the rain against the windows. But after a few minutes, Logan broke the silence. Have you ever thought about asking for a raise? Emily frowned. What? Your salary clearly isn't enough. Have you ever asked for a raise? She let out a brief laugh. I think I'd have to work here for at least a year before even considering it. Logan kept his eyes on the road. Maybe not. Emily studied him. What does that mean? He shrugged. It means you might be more valuable to the company than you realize. She blinked a few times. Was that a compliment? But before she could ask, Logan pulled up in front of her building. Emily hesitated before opening the door. Mr. Miller, why are you doing this? He turned to look at her. Doing what? This, giving me rides, caring. Logan was silent for a moment before answering. Because for the first time I really want to understand you. Emily felt her heartbeat pick up just a little more than it should. Then she opened the door, stepped out of the car, and before entering the building, said something that made Logan smile for the first time in a long while. Good night, Mr. Miller. And thank you for the ride. He just watched as she walked inside. And without realizing it, he smiled slightly. Logan Miller had never considered himself a curious person. He always believed the world worked in simple ways. People did things expecting something in return. But Emily Carter kept proving him wrong, and it frustrated him in a way he couldn't ignore. In the past few days, Logan had noticed something even stranger. He was starting to notice Emily beyond work. It wasn't just about the ride, or the ridiculous way she spent her money. Now, he noticed her presence in the office. The way she made subtle jokes when she was comfortable, the way she furrowed her brows when she focused, the way she helped colleagues without expecting recognition. And the most irritating part, she had no idea of the impact she had. That Monday morning, Logan was in his office reviewing reports when he heard a conversation near the door. Emily, do you have a second? It was Mark, one of the finance managers. Of course, what's up? Emily's voice was light and cheerful. I need help with a report. Can you review it for me? There was a short pause before Emily replied. I'm not sure I'm the best person for this, but I can try. Logan frowned. Why did she always doubt her own abilities? He knew Emily was good at what she did, better than most people there. But for some reason, she didn't see it. And he hated realizing that he wanted her to see it. At the end of the workday, Logan watched Emily leave the building and head to the same small market. He shouldn't have been surprised. It was part of her routine. But this time, something felt off. Emily wasn't smiling like she usually did. Inside the store, Emily picked up a few items and placed them on the counter. The cashier looked at her with a small smile. The usual? Emily hesitated. She looked at her wallet, then at the items. And for the first time in a long while, she realized she wouldn't be able to buy everything she wanted. This month's paycheck had run out faster than she expected. She still had rent to pay, bills, groceries for the week. She never minded sacrificing her own comfort to help others. But at that moment, reality hit her a little harder than usual. Emily? The cashier called. She smiled, trying to hide it. I'll take a little less today, but next week, I'll make up for it. He nodded, packing up the items. Emily left the market and crossed the street to where the homeless people were. But unlike other days, she didn't feel the same lightness in her chest. Because for the first time, she asked herself, what if one day I can't help them anymore? From the top of the building, Logan Miller noticed something different that night. Emily was still there, handing out food. But there was something in the way she moved, in the way she looked at the homeless people. A subtle detail. But he caught it, and without a second thought, he picked up his phone and pressed a button. Call Emily Carter to my office. Now. Emily was putting away her things when she got the message. She sighed. What did Logan Miller want now? With exhaustion weighing on her shoulders, she grabbed her badge and headed to the 35th floor. When she entered the office, Logan was already standing, leaning against his desk, arms crossed. He studied her for a moment before speaking. Close the door. Emily raised an eyebrow but obeyed. Mr. Miller, if this is about what we talked about earlier, I already made it clear that I'm fine. Are you really? She hesitated. Logan was good at reading people, and right now he was reading Emily like an open book. He took a step forward. Today, you bought less than usual. Emily froze. You were watching me? I always watch. She blinked a few times, trying to process that. Mr. Miller, I know you think my habit is strange, but I really don't need. Ask for a raise. Emily stopped. What? Logan crossed his arms. You deserve a raise. Ask for one. Emily frowned. I don't think it's the right time. Logan narrowed his eyes. Emily, you work harder than many employees here. You deserve better pay. I've only been here a few months. And? You want to wait a whole year struggling before realizing you deserve more? Emily swallowed hard. She didn't know how to respond to that. Logan watched her for a moment before sighing. You need to learn to value yourself. She looked away. I know my worth. He smirked slightly, almost challenging. No, you don't, but I do. Emily felt her heart beat a little faster than it should. Why do you care? She asked quietly. Logan was silent for a moment before answering. Because I want to understand you, and for some reason that was the most honest thing he had ever said to anyone. Emily blinked a few times, processing that. Then she did something that caught Logan completely off guard. She smiled. You're a very unusual CEO, Mr. Miller. Logan raised an eyebrow. And you're the most stubborn employee I've ever met. She laughed. He smirked slightly. And for the first time since meeting Emily Carter, Logan Miller realized he didn't just want to understand her. He wanted to see what would happen if he kept caring. In the days that followed, something changed. Emily was still the same, still dedicated to her work, still helping the homeless every night. But now, Logan wasn't just watching. He was getting involved. He called her to his office more often, talked to her more, tested her knowledge, asked questions. And with each passing day, he became more certain of one thing. Emily Carter was unlike anyone he had ever met, and that both unsettled and fascinated him. But more than anything, he wanted to see where this would lead. For Logan Miller, everything was a game of strategy. After all, that's how he built a billion-dollar empire. He was always surrounded by ambitious, competent people, most of them only looking out for themselves. But Emily Carter didn't play that game. She was different. She didn't try to impress. She didn't seek attention. And yet, he couldn't ignore her. And that bothered him more than he cared to admit. In the past few days, Logan noticed that Emily underestimated herself. She was dedicated, insightful, and hardworking, but she didn't see her own value. He didn't know why that irritated him so much. But he knew he wanted to test her, to find out if she was as capable as he was starting to suspect. On Tuesday morning, Logan entered his office and called one of his directors. Prepare a report on last quarter's operating costs. I want it delivered by the end of the week. The director nodded. But before he could leave the room, Logan added, and put Emily Carter on the team. The man blinked a few times. Emily Carter? The junior assistant? Yes. The director hesitated. She's new. Are you sure she can handle it? Logan crossed his arms. I want to see what she's capable of. Emily was in the middle of a report when she received an email about a new project. She frowned as she looked at the details. Operating costs for the last quarter, detailed report, presentation for the board members, and even stranger, her name was on the team. She raised an eyebrow. Was this a mistake? Before she could think any further, she received a direct message from Logan Miller himself. Come to my office. Now. Emily took a deep breath and stood up. When she entered the office, Logan was standing next to his desk, holding a cup of coffee. He looked up as she walked in. Close the door. Emily obeyed, trying to stay calm. Mr. Miller, this email, was it a mistake? Logan raised an eyebrow. What mistake? My name being on this project. I'm just an assistant. He crossed his arms. And? She frowned. And usually only more experienced employees work on projects like this. Logan took a sip of coffee as if it wasn't a big deal. Well, now you have experience. Emily blinked. That's how it works? He shrugged. Now it does. She narrowed her eyes, suspicious. Is this a test? Logan gave a slight smile. What if it is? Emily crossed her arms. Why? He held her gaze for a few seconds before answering. Because I think you're better than you believe. I want to see if I'm right. She didn't know how to respond to that. Because, for the first time, someone believed in her before she believed in herself. And that was new. The week passed quickly. The project was harder than Emily had expected. She had to review numbers, analyze past reports, and understand the company's financial details. But surprisingly, she liked the challenge. On Thursday night, while reviewing the material, she received an unexpected email from Logan. "Report ready?" Emily replied, "Almost. Just finishing the final adjustments." His response came seconds later. "Meet me in my office. Now." Emily swallowed hard. She got up and went to the 35th floor. When she walked in, Logan was sitting at his desk reading some documents. He looked at her and pointed to the chair in front of him. "Sit down." Emily obeyed, feeling a slight nervousness. He picked up a copy of her report and analyzed it for a few seconds before speaking. "It's better than I expected." She raised an eyebrow. "Was that a compliment?" Logan gave a small smile. "You decide." Emily rolled her eyes but smiled. He placed the report on the desk. "The presentation is tomorrow. Are you ready?" She hesitated for a second before nodding. "Yes." Logan looked at her for a few seconds, and then he said something that completely caught her off guard. "Good job, Emily." Emily froze for a moment. She wasn't used to compliments, and coming from Logan Miller, it meant even more. She took a deep breath and smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Miller." He nodded, and for the first time since he met her, Logan noticed something new. He wanted to see her grow. Not just in the company, but because he cared. And that was dangerous. On Friday, Emily was ready for the presentation. The board members were gathered in the meeting room. Logan walked in and took a seat at the head of the table. He looked at Emily and gave a slight nod. She took a deep breath and began. She talked about operational costs, presented charts, and highlighted areas for improvement. And for the first time, she felt like she truly belonged there. When she finished, the room was silent for a few seconds. And then one of the board members started clapping. The others followed, and Emily could hardly believe it. Logan looked at her with a different expression in his eyes. "Well done, Carter." She smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. And for the first time, she believed she could be more than she had imagined. Logan was right about her. And in that moment, she finally saw it. Emily Carter was not used to recognition. She had always worked hard but was never the type to draw attention. Her focus was on doing a good job and staying on track. But after that Friday's presentation, everything changed. The way people looked at her in the office was different. More people greeted her. Some even came to ask for advice. And the strangest thing of all, Logan Miller seemed genuinely pleased. On Monday morning, Emily arrived at work and found an envelope on her desk. She frowned when she saw her name written on the front. Opening it, she found a short, direct note. "Good job on the presentation. Consider this an encouragement." Emily raised an eyebrow. Inside the envelope, there was a considerable bonus attached to her paycheck. She held her breath. "Is this serious?" Before she could process it, she sensed someone standing next to her. "Good morning, Carter." She turned quickly and saw Logan standing there, hands in his pockets, his expression neutral. "Mr. Miller, this is a bonus?" He nodded. "Yes." Emily blinked a few times. "Why?" "Because you deserve it." Her heart skipped a beat. Logan wasn't the kind of boss who handed out compliments lightly. If he was saying this, it was because he truly meant it. And somehow that meant more than it should. "Thank you," she said, genuinely touched. He just nodded and stepped away. And Emily stood there, trying to understand exactly what was happening between them. In the days that followed, Logan started acting differently. He called Emily into more meetings, asked for her input on decisions that were usually reserved for executives. And the most intriguing part, he looked at her differently. Not in an obvious way, but Emily could feel when he was watching her. And sometimes she caught herself watching him back. One evening, after work, Emily left the building and, as usual, headed to the small grocery store. But this time, as she walked out, she noticed a black car parked across the street. The window rolled down slowly, and there he was. "Logan Miller, you really going to keep doing this even after the bonus?" he asked, a hint of humor in his voice. Emily laughed. "Of course." He watched her for a moment before opening the car door. "Get in." Emily blinked. "Excuse me, what?" "Get in the car. I want to see this for myself." She frowned. "You want what?" "I want to see it with my own eyes." Emily hesitated for a moment, but then something inside her told her to go. And for the first time, Logan Miller went with her to see the homeless community. The scene was almost comical. The people looked at Logan like he was from another planet. And to be fair, he did seem completely out of place. Emily had to hold back a laugh when Marvin, the oldest of the group, eyed Logan suspiciously. "You're Emily's boss?" Logan nodded, crossing his arms. "Yes." Marvin looked him up and down. "Huh. Never thought I'd see a suit around here." "Surprise," Logan said flatly. Emily had to bite her tongue to keep from laughing. But as she handed out the food, she noticed Logan was really paying attention. He saw how people thanked her, saw their smiles, saw the real impact of what she did. And for the first time he had no idea what to say. When they finished, Emily turned to Logan. "Well, what did you think?" He looked thoughtful. "It's different seeing it up close," she smiled. "Helping people feels good. You should try it more often." He raised an eyebrow. "Don't get used to it." Emily laughed. But deep down she had a feeling that Logan Miller had just changed. Just a little. And maybe he didn't even realize it yet. In the days that followed, their relationship shifted. Not in an obvious way, but it was there. There were more glances, more casual conversations, and above all, a growing connection that neither of them wanted to admit. But one that, inevitably, was happening. The question was, how far would it go? Emily Carter never thought that, in such a short time, she would feel like she truly belonged at the company. After the successful presentation, the unexpected bonus, and most of all, after that night when Logan Miller joined her in her volunteer work, something had changed. Not just in her relationship with her colleagues, but also with Logan. There was an unspoken understanding between them. Something neither of them said out loud, but something impossible to ignore. And maybe that's why some people started noticing, and didn't like it one bit. The day started like any other. Emily was reviewing documents when she received an unexpected notification. An email marked as urgent, sent by the finance director. "I need to speak with you." "Now." Conference room 3. Emily frowned. That was strange. Still, she grabbed her notebook and headed to the room. When she entered, she found the director, the department manager, and 2 other supervisors. And at the center of the table, a pile of printed documents. The atmosphere was tense. "Emily, take a seat," the director said, getting straight to the point. She did, but a sense of unease started growing inside her. "What's going on?" she asked. The manager took a deep breath and pointed at the papers. "These are the reports you submitted last week." She looked at the documents. Yes, they were the same operational cost reports. "And?" she asked. The director threw another set of papers in front of her. "These are the reports reviewed by the audit team, and there are serious discrepancies in the numbers." Emily frowned. "Excuse me, what?" The manager crossed his arms. "You're being accused of financial data manipulation, Emily." Her heart sank. This is a mistake." She grabbed the papers and quickly examined them. The numbers were different from what she had submitted. But something was off. These weren't her numbers. "These reports were altered," she said, her voice firm. The director didn't look convinced. "Are you sure?" Emily felt her face heat up. "I would never alter financial data." The manager held her gaze for a long moment before letting out a sigh. "I'm sorry, Emily, but the board has decided to suspend you until this is resolved." It felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. "Suspended?" "It's standard procedure for cases like this," the director explained. "While we investigate, you'll be placed on leave without access to the company's systems." Emily tried to process his words, but the only thought in her mind was, "This can't be happening." Hours later, Emily was leaving the building with her belongings in a box. People glanced at her with curiosity. Some whispered. Others avoided eye contact. She felt a knot tighten in her chest, and then she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Emily!" She turned to see Logan Miller striding toward her, his steps quick, his expression serious. Her heart clenched even tighter. "So you've heard," she murmured. He stopped in front of her, his sharp eyes studying her. "What the hell is going on?" Emily bit her lip, trying to contain her frustration. "I've been suspended. They're accusing me of data manipulation." Logan's eyes darkened with something dangerous. "That's ridiculous." "I know, but I have no way to prove I didn't do anything wrong." He was silent for a moment, then crossed his arms. "Who reviewed your reports?" Emily took a deep breath. "The finance manager and one of the supervisors. But I swear, Logan, I didn't do this." His eyes narrowed slightly. "I believe you," she blinked. He believed her? Logan took a deep breath, as if trying to control his frustration. "Give me some time, I'll fix this." Emily shook her head. Logan, you can't just step in. This could hurt you. He raised an eyebrow. Do you really think I care about that? She had no response. Then he took a step closer and said quietly, don't go too far. This isn't over. And in that moment, Emily believed him. Because, for the first time, someone was willing to fight for her. For the next 2 days, Emily stayed home, unsure of what to do. She didn't know where to go, what to think, or how to prove her innocence. But then, on Wednesday afternoon, she received an unexpected message. It was from an unknown number. Emily? I found something. Be at the office tomorrow morning. LM, her heart pounded. What had Logan discovered? The next morning, Emily returned to the building. People stared as she walked down the hallway, but she didn't care. The only thing on her mind was finding out what Logan had to say. When she stepped into his office, her heart nearly stopped, because Logan wasn't alone. The finance manager and one of the supervisors were sitting at the table, looking visibly uncomfortable, and Logan, as always, was in complete control of the situation. Emily, have a seat. She obeyed, feeling the tension in the air. Logan crossed his arms and looked directly at the manager. Why don't you tell her what we just found out? The manager swallowed hard. There was an error in the report review. Emily raised an eyebrow. An error? Yes. There was a file mix-up, and it ended up looking like you had altered the data. But in reality, it was an internal mistake. Emily felt a mix of relief and anger. So you suspended me without even verifying the facts? The supervisor averted his gaze, clearly ashamed. It was a rushed decision. Logan slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. A rushed decision? You nearly destroyed the career of a competent employee because of incompetence. The two men shrank back. This won't be ignored. Logan said coldly, I want a formal apology sent to Emily and a full report on what happened. The manager nodded quickly. Of course, Mr. Miller. Logan then turned to Emily. You can return to work immediately. She held her breath. Really? Really? And honestly, I'm surprised you even want to stay after this mess, she smirked. Well, I'm not the type to give up easily. Logan smiled back. I've noticed. When Emily left the office, she felt an enormous weight lift off her shoulders. She was back. But more importantly, she knew Logan Miller was on her side. And deep down, that meant more than any bonus or promotion. Because, for the first time, she wasn't alone. She knew that if Logan hadn't stepped in, she would probably still be trying to prove something she didn't do. And that meant she owed him a favor. She didn't like owing anyone anything, especially not the CEO of the company. But deep down, there was something about knowing that Logan had cared that made her feel uncomfortably warm inside. In the days that followed, the atmosphere at the company felt different. Emily noticed that people looked at her differently now. Not with disdain, but with a certain curiosity and even respect. After all, not everyone walked away unscathed from a situation like that. But more than that, Logan was different. Not in an obvious way, but Emily could sense it. He passed by her desk more often, asked more about the reports, looked at her in a way that left her unsettled. And then, something completely unexpected happened. On Friday afternoon, as Emily was going through some emails, her phone buzzed with a direct message. It was from Logan. Dinner. Tonight. You're coming. Emily raised an eyebrow. What? She stared at the screen for a second, making sure she had read it correctly. Was he inviting her to dinner? Or was this an order? She bit her lip, trying to ignore the sudden nervousness, and replied, Is this an invitation or a summons? The response came seconds later. A summons. Emily rolled her eyes but chuckled. And what's the occasion? Let's call it a celebration for getting you out of that sabotage mess. Emily let out a dramatic sigh. So in reality, this is just a trap to remind me that I owe you. Exactly. See you at 8 p.m. I'll send you the address. Emily closed her eyes for a moment. This was a terrible idea, but for some reason she knew she was going to say yes. That night, Emily arrived at the restaurant a little early. The place was upscale, with dim lighting and an elegant atmosphere. Definitely out of her comfort zone. As soon as she stepped in, a hostess led her to the table where Logan was already seated, waiting. He looked up at her and gave a small smile. Punctual. I like that. Emily raised an eyebrow as she took her seat. This place is way too fancy for someone who thinks a granola bar qualifies as a decent dinner. Logan chuckled. I wanted to impress. She picked up the menu and pretended to study it. You want to impress me? He lifted his wine glass, watching her over the rim. Apparently, yes. Emily felt warmth creeping up her neck. All right. So what's the real reason for this dinner? Logan leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. I wanted to see how you were doing after everything that happened. She frowned slightly. I'm fine. He raised an eyebrow. Are you? Emily hesitated for a moment before sighing. Okay, it was awful. Logan nodded, satisfied with her honesty. And now? How do you feel? She thought for a moment before answering. I guess I'm stronger than I thought. He gave a slight smile. Yes, you are. Emily held his gaze for a moment, and that's when she realized. This wasn't just a casual dinner. There was something different about that night. A tension in the air that neither of them wanted to admit, but both of them felt it. The conversation flowed more easily after that. Emily noticed that when Logan relaxed, he wasn't as intimidating as he was at the office. In fact, he even had a dry, sarcastic sense of humor that amused her. And Logan realized that Emily was even more charming outside of work. After an hour of conversation, the waiter brought the check. Emily reached for her wallet, but Logan stopped her with a look. You're not thinking of paying, are you? She raised an eyebrow. I can't even split it? No. That's old-fashioned, Logan smiled. Call it traditional. She rolled her eyes but smiled too. As they walked out of the restaurant, the atmosphere between them felt different. There was a new weight in the air, something unspoken but undeniable. And for the first time, Emily realized she might be playing with fire. Because until that moment, she had never really stopped to think about what it meant to have Logan Miller's full attention. But now, it was impossible not to notice. He opened the car door for her, and just before she got in, he said something that made her heart race. I enjoyed tonight. Emily swallowed hard. It was just dinner. Don't get used to it. Logan smirked. Too late. She got into the car before her brain had time to process what that really meant. But one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. Emily never imagined that a casual dinner, okay, maybe not so casual, could change so much between her and Logan. By the following Monday, when she walked into the office, she expected everything to go back to normal. But to her surprise, nothing was normal. Something was different. And the most frustrating part? She knew the reason was Logan. He wasn't acting differently. But Emily could feel the shift, in the way he looked at her, in the way others looked at her after they had dinner together, and most of all, in the way her own heart reacted every time he was near. Which was a huge problem. Because Logan Miller was not someone to play around with. That morning, Emily was focused on a report when she heard someone clear their throat beside her. She looked up and saw Logan standing there, hands in his pockets, expression neutral. Would you accompany the CEO to the cafe? Emily blinked a few times. Was that an invitation? It was a summons. She rolled her eyes but smiled and stood up. They walked to the company cafe together, and Emily noticed the way people were watching them. People were paying attention, but Logan didn't seem to care in the slightest. When they reached the counter, he placed the order without even asking what she wanted. Black coffee, no sugar, he told the barista. Emily crossed her arms. You think you know me well, don't you? Logan gave a small smirk. I think so. Emily tried not to focus on the fact that maybe he actually did. When they got their coffees, Logan led her to a table in a quieter corner. He stayed silent for a moment before speaking. Emily, I want you to start joining more executive meetings. She nearly choked on her coffee. Wait, what? He looked at her seriously. You have potential. I want to see how far you can go. Emily blinked a few times, trying to process. And what if I don't want to? Then give me a good reason. She bit her lip, hesitant. The truth? She wanted to. But the fear of messing up was holding her back. Logan seemed to notice. You're afraid of failing? Emily took a deep breath. I don't like making mistakes. Logan rested his arms on the table and looked directly at her, then learned to fail without fear. Emily had no words, but deep down she knew he was right. And maybe it was time to take the challenge. In the following days, Emily realized Logan was serious about this. She started getting invited to important meetings. He asked for her opinion more often. And slowly, the way people in the company looked at her began to change. She was no longer just an assistant. She was someone Logan Miller valued. And that didn't go unnoticed. On Friday, Emily was organizing a report when she got a notification. A message from Logan. Dinner tonight? She raised an eyebrow. This time, he was actually asking. But the problem? Emily knew that if she said yes, she'd be crossing an invisible line. She typed a reply. Can't tonight. His response came in seconds. Understood. But one day, you'll say yes. Emily let out a sigh, because deep down she knew he was right. The question was, what would happen when that day finally came? Emily thought that turning down Logan's dinner invitation would clear up any emotional confusion. But she was very wrong. In fact, it only seemed to make his interest grow. And the worst part? Her own interest was growing too. Days passed, and Emily's new routine included more meetings, more challenges, and more interactions with Logan. She loved everything she was learning, but she also hated the fact that, more and more, she and Logan seemed to be playing a dangerous game. A game no one dared to mention, but one they both felt. On Wednesday afternoon, Emily was at the company cafe, getting coffee, when she sensed someone stepping closer. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Black coffee, no sugar, Logan murmured beside her. Emily smirked. If I ever change my order, will you lose your mind? He raised an eyebrow. No, but I'd be disappointed, she laughed. They took their coffees and sat at a quiet table. And, for a moment, it felt like they were just two normal people. But then Logan broke the silence. Why did you turn down dinner that night? Emily wasn't expecting that question. She blinked a few times before answering. Because it would be a terrible idea. Logan tilted his head slightly, studying her. And why is that? She crossed her arms. Because you're my boss. He gave a slight smile. That's never been a problem before. Emily felt her face heat up. Don't make this weird. I'm not the one making it weird. She let out a heavy sigh. Logan, we both know this can't happen. He was silent for a moment before replying. And what if I wanted it to? Emily's heart raced. He was being direct now. But she couldn't. She couldn't cross that line. So she took a deep breath and gave him a small smile. Then, that would be your problem. And she walked away before he could say anything else. That night, Emily couldn't sleep well. She knew Logan wasn't the kind of man who gave up easily. And for the first time, she wondered if she wanted to give up on this. The problem? She already knew the answer. But admitting it was another story. In the days that followed, things felt different. Logan didn't back off, but he also didn't push. He was just there, watching her, waiting. And Emily knew, at some point she would give in. The only question was, when? For the last few days, Emily had been pretending nothing was happening. Pretending that the way Logan looked at her didn't make her heart race. Pretending that the fact he hadn't asked her again about dinner didn't leave her disappointed. But the truth was simple. The tension between them was becoming unbearable. And Emily knew that sooner or later, something had to happen. On Friday morning, Emily sat at her desk, focused on the report Logan had requested. Or at least, she was trying to focus. Because every 5 minutes her mind drifted back to him. To the way he looked at her. To the way he seemed to be waiting for her to give in. And the worst part? She wasn't sure if she wanted to keep resisting. Sighing, she shook her head and tried to focus on the numbers in front of her. But then, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Logan. My office. Now. Emily rolled her eyes, but her heart skipped a beat. She grabbed her notebook and stood up, trying to look casual. But deep down, she knew nothing about this conversation would be normal. When she walked into Logan's office, she immediately noticed something different. He wasn't sitting behind his desk like he usually did. Instead, he was standing by the window, looking out at the city. Emily closed the door softly. Do you need something, Mr. Miller? She asked, trying to keep her tone professional. Logan turned to face her and stared for a long moment. And then, without hesitation, he asked, How long do you plan on pretending you don't feel what I feel? Emily's heart stopped for a second. She hadn't expected him to be so direct. Swallowing hard, she crossed her arms. And what exactly do you think I feel? Logan gave a small smile, as if he knew something she hadn't admitted to herself yet. I think you feel the same way I do. Emily looked away, trying to control the wave of emotions rising inside her. This can't happen, Logan. He took a step closer. Why not? She met his gaze again. Because you're my boss. And, Emily blinked. And, it's wrong. Logan raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. Wrong for who? For others or for you? She said nothing. because she didn't have an answer for that. And Logan knew it. He took another step closer, closing the space between them. Give me one real reason why this shouldn't happen. Emily took a deep breath. Because it will go wrong. Logan tilted his head slightly. And what if it goes right? She held her breath. Because, for the first time, she considered that possibility. And that was terrifying. The silence between them was filled with something neither of them dared to say. Emily felt the heat radiating from Logan, the intensity of his gaze. It was like he was waiting for her to give in, and maybe she wanted to. But before she could do anything, Logan's phone rang, breaking the moment. He looked at the screen and sighed. I need to take this. Emily nodded quickly, taking the chance to leave. She needed air. For the next few days, Emily avoided Logan as much as she could. Not because she was angry, but because she knew that if she stayed close to him, she wouldn't be able to resist. And right now, she wasn't ready to deal with that. But Logan didn't seem willing to let it go. On Tuesday afternoon, she got a message from him. Dinner. Tonight. No excuses. Emily bit her lip, hesitating. She knew that if she said yes, there would be no turning back. But before she could reply, Logan sent another message. Just dinner. I promise. Emily let out a deep breath, and before she could change her mind, she answered. Okay. Dinner was surprisingly easy. They talked about work, funny office stories, normal things, and for a moment, Emily let herself forget about the weight of the situation. But as they were leaving the restaurant, the inevitable happened. Logan grabbed her arm before she could get into the taxi. She looked at him, surprised. Emily. His voice was lower, more intense. Her heart pounded. And then, before she could think, Logan leaned in and kissed her. The kiss wasn't planned. It wasn't something that followed logic. It was inevitable. There was desire, tension, but also something else. Something Emily didn't want to admit. When they pulled apart, Logan looked into her eyes and gave a slight smile. Is this still a mistake to you? Emily didn't know how to answer, because at that moment, the only thing on her mind was the fact that she wanted to kiss him again. And maybe that was the most dangerous thing of all. Emily couldn't stop thinking about that kiss. It was irrational. It was wrong. And yet she couldn't bring herself to wish it hadn't happened. Ever since she met Logan Miller, her life had completely spun out of control. And now, there was no more pretending that nothing was happening. The problem was, what to do about it? The next morning, Emily woke up more exhausted than when she'd gone to bed. The night had been a mess of tangled thoughts, memories of the kiss, and the crushing uncertainty of what it all meant. She needed to be rational. She worked for Logan. He was her boss. This could complicate everything. But even as she repeated those arguments in her head, she knew it was already too late, because the truth was simple. She wanted more. And that was a problem. At the office, things felt different. Not in an obvious way, but Emily could feel Logan's eyes on her every time he walked past her desk. He didn't mention the kiss, but he also didn't avoid her. It was as if he was waiting for her to make a decision. And the longer she waited, the more she realized she needed to decide soon. On Friday, at the end of the workday, Emily was packing up her things when she got an unexpected notification. A message from Logan. Penthouse. 8 p.m. Emily's heart raced. She knew that if she went, there would be no more uncertainty. But at that moment, she didn't want to run anymore. So she took a deep breath and decided to go. When she arrived at the penthouse, Logan was already there, leaning against the railing, looking out at the city. He turned when he heard her approaching. I thought you wouldn't come. Emily gave a small smile. I thought about not coming. He raised an eyebrow. So why did you? She was silent for a moment. Then, she took a deep breath and told the truth. Because I don't want to run from this. Logan held her gaze for a moment, and then, without saying a word, he stepped closer and kissed her again. This time, there were no doubts, no excuses. It was real. And Emily didn't want to fight it anymore. But when they pulled apart, one question lingered in the air. What now? In the days that followed, Emily and Logan continued seeing each other outside of work. But inside the office, nothing changed. They were professionals. But those who knew them well were starting to sense that something was different. And Emily knew it wouldn't be long before someone started asking questions. On Monday, Logan called her into his office. Emily closed the door and crossed her arms. Is this about work or about us? He gave a small smile. This time, about us. She swallowed hard. What is it? He looked at her seriously. This can't stay a secret forever. Emily felt her stomach tighten. You want to make this public? Logan shrugged. I don't want to hide. I don't need to. Emily was silent for a moment. Then she took a deep breath and nodded. Because deep down she knew this day would come. The idea of not hiding what was happening between her and Logan scared Emily more than she wanted to admit. Lately, everything had been simple. At least as simple as a relationship with Logan Miller could be. Outside of work, they saw each other every night. They talked about everything. They laughed together. And to her own surprise, Emily was starting to enjoy it more than she should. But inside the office, things were still the same, or at least they were, until now. The next morning, Emily arrived at work feeling a strange tension in the air. People were looking at her differently. Some whispered to each other. Others just stared openly. She frowned, confused, and then she saw something that made her stomach drop. On a nearby computer screen, a news article was open. CEO of Miller Enterprises spotted having an intimate dinner with an employee. Emily held her breath. Her name wasn't in the article, but the photo was of her and Logan leaving the restaurant last week. She felt her face heat up. She went straight to her desk and grabbed her phone. A message from Logan was already waiting. My office. Now. When she walked into his office, Emily shut the door and crossed her arms. So this went public sooner than we expected. Logan was sitting on the edge of his desk, holding his phone. He didn't look surprised at all. Someone saw us at the restaurant. Emily let out a breath. And now? Logan shrugged. Now we move forward. Emily raised an eyebrow. That's it? You don't care? He looked her straight in the eyes. Do you care? Emily opened her mouth to answer, but she realized she didn't know the answer. In the days that followed, the gossip spread like wildfire. At the office, everyone had an opinion. Some said Emily was trying to climb the corporate ladder. Others thought she was just another distraction for Logan, and with every new rumor, she felt more and more suffocated. But Logan? Logan seemed unfazed. He didn't let it shake him. And in a way, that irritated her. Because for her, this wasn't simple. This was her career, her life. And now it was being treated like a scandal. On Friday, after an especially tough day, Emily was gathering her things to leave when Logan appeared beside her desk. Let's go. She frowned. Where? To a place where no one will bother us. She hesitated for a second, but then she realized she needed this, so she grabbed her things and followed him. They went to a quiet restaurant, far from prying eyes. And for the first time in days, Emily took a deep breath and relaxed. Logan noticed. Tough day? She let out a humorless laugh. One of the worst. He held her gaze for a moment. I can fix this. Emily shook her head. No, if I can't handle this on my own, then I'm not strong enough to be here. Logan gave a small smile. That's one of the things I like most about you. Emily's heart skipped a beat, but before she could respond, he reached across the table and took her hand. We'll get through this. And in that moment, Emily wanted to believe him. Because, despite everything, she didn't want to give up. Not on this. Not on him. Emily never imagined her life would take this turn. When she started working at Miller Enterprises, all she wanted was stability. Now her life was splashed across gossip websites. There were whispers at the office, curious stares, and judgments she never asked for. But there was also Logan. And no matter how chaotic everything around her felt, when she was with him, it all made sense. On Monday morning, Emily walked into the office determined to face everything head-on. She wouldn't hide. She wouldn't let anyone define her story. And to her surprise, as the day went on, the comments started fading. People moved on from scandals quickly, and it seemed they were ready for the next one. But for Emily, the real test was still ahead. Because lately there was something different about Logan. Something in the way he looked at her. Something in the brief pauses before he spoke. As if he was waiting for the right moment for something. And deep down, Emily felt that moment coming. On Friday night, Logan invited her to a special dinner. But this time, something about the atmosphere was different. The restaurant was private, the table decorated with candles and flowers. And when Logan took her hand, Emily knew something big was about to happen. He looked into her eyes and took a deep breath. Emily, I've never been good at expressing emotions. She gave a small smile. I noticed, he chuckled. But you changed that. Emily's heart pounded. Logan let out a sigh and continued. I thought my life was complete, that I had everything, but then you came along, and for the first time, I realized I was missing something. Emily felt her eyes sting with tears. He smiled slightly before kneeling in front of her. Emily's eyes widened and she felt breathless. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it, and inside a stunning ring gleamed under the restaurant's soft light. I never imagined I'd find someone like you. Logan held her hand firmly. Someone who challenges me, makes me laugh, makes me want to be a better man. Tears slid down Emily's cheeks. You taught me that life isn't just about success, but about who we have by our side to share it with. Logan took a deep breath, his eyes locked on hers. So, Emily Carter, will you be my wife? Emily's heart felt like it would burst. She couldn't stop smiling, even as the tears fell. And then she spoke the words that would change her life forever. Yes. For the first time in a long while, Logan smiled openly. He slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss full of promises. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Nothing except the fact that they had chosen each other. Months later, the big day finally arrived. Emily had never felt so nervous, but she had also never felt so happy. She stood in front of the mirror wearing a breathtaking white dress. Her eyes sparkled with emotion, and when the church doors opened, she saw Logan at the altar. He looked impeccable in his black suit, but his eyes held the same intensity as always. But now there was something new, something deeper, something only she had the privilege of knowing. As Emily walked down the aisle, everything around her faded away. It was just her and him. And when she stopped in front of him, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. The judge began the ceremony, but Emily barely heard the words. All she could feel was Logan's presence, the way he held her hands so firmly, as if he would never let go. Then, finally, it was time for the vows. Logan looked at her and smiled. Emily, I never imagined that someone like you would walk into my life and turn everything upside down in the most perfect way. She let out a soft laugh, feeling tears well up. I've always been a man who needed certainty. But you taught me that sometimes the best things in life are the ones we don't plan. Logan took a deep breath before continuing. I promise to love you, to support you, and to remind you every day how much you've made my life better. Emily swallowed her tears and squeezed his hands. Then it was her turn. Logan, when I met you, I had no idea how much you would turn my world upside down. He chuckled softly. Emily smiled. But now, I can't imagine my life without you. She took a deep breath before continuing. I promise to love you, even when you're stubborn. I promise to laugh at your bad jokes. I promise to stand by your side through every victory and every challenge. Emily looked into his eyes. And most of all, I promise to be yours, today and always. Logan swallowed hard, clearly moved, and when they finally heard the words, I now pronounce you husband and wife, he didn't wait. He pulled Emily into a passionate kiss as everyone around them clapped and wiped away tears. And in that moment, they knew this was only the first page of a new story, a story they would write together, forever. What did you think of Emily and Logan's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate this story? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories. And don't forget to check out more emotional stories by clicking here on the final screen.